Welcome to the Mount Pleasant podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people of Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor, the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant podcast. The town of Mount Pleasant, it's a great place to work. It's a great place to do business, a great place to live. And some of our businesses are making lives better for some of the folks who live here. Today on the Mount Pleasant podcast, we're going to talk to one of those businesses. I'm Brian Cleary, and Mount Pleasant Gardens, the executive director of that organization, joins us today along with the community resource director here on the Mount Pleasant podcast. We're talking about Leanne Lovin and also Denise Kish. Denise, let's talk with you. For someone who maybe hasn't heard of or doesn't know what Mount Pleasant Gardens is all about, how would you describe it to me?
Mount Pleasant Gardens is a standalone memory care community. We take care of those with dementia, with a dementia diagnosis. And dementia is an umbrella term for those with Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies, vascular dementia, frontal temporal lobe, Parkinson's, so Huntington's. So there's a vast amount of different dementias underneath that dementia umbrella. So we are standalone. We have a diagnosis of dementia for those that want to come and live with us, and that's who we care for.
Denise, obviously you're more of an expert in the field. You deal with that kind of stuff all the time. But if I'm a son or daughter, maybe I'm a spouse of a loved one, what are some of the signs that I need to be aware of if I'm going to consider a placement for my loved one at Mount Pleasant Gardens?
So you want to look for someone who is starting to see a decline in their memory and also in their executive skills that are happening during the day. So someone who might not be changing their clothes that often. They're forgetting a loved one. They're not eating right. They're repeating themselves consistently. And especially if you're on the phone with them, they're calling you with the same question over and over and over again. You might visit them in their house and start to see a huge decline in the way that they're living. They're not really taking care of themselves very well. They're not taking care of their house. And they start to hallucinate or think of see things that might not always be there. And you'll start to see that decline. A lot of them can mask it, but then you start to see that there are definitely changes in who they are. They're changing from who they were into a different individual.
And Denise, I have to assume in this instance that not all people are going to have the exact same set of signs, just some people will have different ones than others.
And some of them it'll be a gradual decline where others will be a sharp decline. And I think that's what we see all the time, Leanne and I, that, people who come here are all in different stages of this process. Something's happened in the family. They've had a fall or an injury or even an illness that's brought them to the hospital, that they've seen something happen, or they've gotten lost. And the family is already are seeing that they have to make some adjustments in their care. And we want to come to those individuals at the beginning of that, because the first step isn't just coming into an Alzheimer's community. The first step is getting resources to help you manage as they're going to journey through this disease, actually.
Be part of the conversation surrounding Mount Pleasant. Sponsor the Mount Pleasant podcast. Podcast marketing is the new, powerful way to brand your business and reach your customers. For more information, visit carolinapodcasts.com or call 843-345-7012.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant podcast.
This is where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. It's the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm Brian Cleary. Today, I'm joined by the executive director of Mount Pleasant Gardens. She is Denise Kish. Also with us, the community resource director of Mount Pleasant Gardens, Leanne Lovin, is with us. And Leanne, let's bring you into the conversation. In terms of a community resource director, what would that mean that you do?
So families will connect with me. Usually they call me first or come for a tour. Usually something has happened that has brought their attention. A lot of times they just need resources. So most of the time, spouses will come to me and tell me, I'm not ready for years down the road. I hear that every time. But, what is kind of the process? And so what I am trying to do is educate those families that first and foremost, you should always look, if you're the primary caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's dementia, what happens if you were to get in a car accident today? What happens if you have a heart attack? What happens if you fall and break your hip? Who is going to take over the care of your loved one? If you don't have that in place, it is very reactive. It's not fun for the children that have to step up, who are working full time, have their own children. So I tell them, go tour every community. You find the memory care that you're comfortable with for your loved one. Put a deposit down. Doesn't mean you have to move in. So that way, if something were to happen to you tomorrow, your kids know where to place their loved one. Second step is always get home support. People think, oh, if mom gets put in the hospital, I'll just call an agency and someone will pop up like Mary Poppins. That's not how it works. You call a home care agency, they have to come out and assess the individual. Then they have to match them with the caregiver. It can take a week to get a caregiver into the home. Meantime, your children are picking up the extra work and they're, having to leave their jobs and their children caring for your loved one while you're in the hospital. So I tell them to always get home support. And then lastly, what we've been seeing recently is especially the men, their wives do all the personal care and then they bring them to us and no one else is cared for them besides their spouse. What do you think happens? They don't like when a stranger tries to get them undressed and in the shower. Our staff is getting abused. So I ask them, when you get home support 2 times a week, 3 times a week, it gives you a break, have them come in the morning, you go do grocery shopping, go work out, whatever you need to do, and have that care provider start personal care. So there's someone else other than a family member providing that care. So when they come to us, it's not foreign to them with strangers caring for them.
Leanne, it seems like what you're talking about, a lot of common sense in there, but I guess in this period, it's something that maybe I wouldn't think about because I'm not necessarily thinking that far down the road, I guess. So is there a timeline? I guess it would be an individual basis, obviously, but as you look at an overall thing, is there any way for you to generalize a timeline in terms of my spouse is getting to that point? Should I be looking, knowing that this is going to be a year out or 6 months?
If they can't be left home alone, then you need to have a backup plan. If you can't go to the grocery store without worrying that your husband or wife is going to get out and get lost, or they can't manage their own care, then you don't know when your time, what's going to happen to you. And everyone is reactive. They say, oh, I promised my husband I'm never going to place him in memory care. Well, you don't know what's going to happen down the road. You don't know how your health is going to be impacted. Maybe your husband's going to be up all night long. We have children while we're younger for a reason, I tell them. When we're in our 80s, it's not easy to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and take care of a full grown adult and then still function all day long. So usually it's that, or you don't understand how hard it is to change someone's your husband, who's 6'3" and maybe weighs 200 pounds, and you're trying to clean them up every day. It's exhausting. It's taxing. So anytime that they cannot leave that loved one home, they need to have stuff in place. Even if they don't plan on utilizing it, they still need to have a plan.
So Denise, let's get specifically to Mount Pleasant Gardens. Tell me some of the things that if I've got, again, a spouse, a family member that I think is going to need some assistance, what is it that you have to offer that might be different, better, et cetera, than another facility?
Well, being assisted living really does give us a great benefit. And as well as that the building is built, so there are 2 different sides. They are the same, but there are 2 different distinct communities within Mount Pleasant Gardens. And in the center of the building, on those 2 sides is a huge courtyard, which is open for all of the residents to mingle and be a part of the outdoors. So on the first side, we have all females, and that's our higher functioning side of females. That means that they still have the things that exist in the community. They want to have friends. They want to have purpose. They want to enjoy their life. And that is our dedication to, we know that they have this disease that is going to take a lot from them. But when they walk through our doors, we want them to feel joy and love and purpose, and that they're going to make a difference within the community. So they're going to be part of that, and they're going to form friendships. They continue to be able to go into their room and be on their own a little bit, but we don't want to keep them in our room because we are very robust with activities. We want them to go outside when they want to. A lot of places have it, you can only be buzzed out the door. And here they can go outside to our courtyard, which mimics a front porch. And the two sides kind of sit alongside and think that they're across the street from each other. So you'll see them waving or going and engaging their neighbor. So we offer that side for females, and we have a number of them that have come in and said, I didn't want to come here, but all of a sudden now I have made friends. I am social. I'm doing things instead of just being alone, because they tend to isolate. A lot of times with Alzheimer's, they know something's going on, and sometimes they'll be with friends who might, remind them that, oh, you forgot that, or why are you eating with your finger and not your fork? And they tend to seclude themselves. So here they can be who they are. And we, one of the things I tell the staff constantly is we need to become students of our residents. So Leanne starts that process by asking a lot of questions and finding so much about that resident before they come in. So we place them on the right side, and we have them ready to make those friends and be social. So our days are about a lot of activities. We have 4 activity personnel, and that's pretty unheard of in a community that's small, because we want to make sure that they are busy from morning to night and that they can do what they want. There's all different activities they can be a part of. Lots of physical exercise. We have a walking club. We do bring in someone who does like a Zoom kind of an event for them, as well as we have spiritual Bible studies, and the ladies will have that on their side, on their own, as well as with a big group. We have a lot of emotional support, because you'd be surprised they need that support. Know your, like, and I would call it like, know your daughter is going to come. She's going to come and see you. She told us she's going to be here. We're just waiting for her to come. And then we can call the daughter and set something up, or the son or the husband. So we're that emotional support, or just a friend to talk to. As well as, the intellectual. We want to keep all those brain cells going as long as possible. And that involves all of that. The second side is a little bit more of a regress side. And that means that they've gone through the disease a little bit more. They need a little bit more oversight. And we also have the men all on one side, that it's a mixture of co-ed women and men on one side, that, the men all live together, and we find that they coexist very easily together. And we're really pleased with that model. And that would be all levels of different males that are on that side.
Today here on the Mount Pleasant podcast, we're talking with the women who are in charge of the Mount Pleasant Gardens. Leanne Lovin is the Community Resource Director, and their Executive Director is Denise Kish. Denise, I have to ask, because on your email, you've got a lot of letters after your name. LNHA, CRCFA, CDP. Give me an idea. I'm just very impressed by that. What do all those stand for?
So big. Yeah. I started my career in New Jersey, so I was a licensed nursing home administrator. So I come with that. And when I moved to South Carolina, I had to retake a lot of exams, and I became a community assisted living administrator as well. And the CDP, which is behind all of our names, is a certified dementia practitioner. That's one of the things that I'm so very big on with our staff that come in. We are TIPA SNO positive approach trained, as well as all our leaders are certified dementia practitioners, so that we know our business and we can make changes and understand how we take care of those individuals.
And Denise, you're also on the Governor's Alzheimer's Resource Coordination Center Advisory Board. That's got to be another nice layer to be able to bring to your position.
It is. It really is. And I'm so excited about that because they really have a handle on what's going to be happening in this world and of Alzheimer's, because it is going to be a tsunami, they call it, that's going to be coming. All of us are going to be affected by it in our families, one way or the other, which is so sad. But how do we now, which I'm so excited about, train our professionals like the EMSs, the nurses in the ERs, to understand how to talk to and care for a person with Alzheimer's that comes in with some type of dementia, because most of them come in with that, as well as the research that's being done throughout the state to combat this, and also go into rural areas where they don't understand it as much. And how do we help them to live healthier lives so that we can help them, hold off the disease or hold off the process of it and not live alone, be part of a community. And I think that's such a big thing, that as we grow older, the more we stay involved and keep good, healthy habits, that we can not avoid it if we're going to have it, but, delay it a little bit and keep our brains moving.
I know, you're the Community Resource Director of Mount Pleasant Gardens. How long have you been with Mount Pleasant Gardens?
Almost 4.5 years now.
And I see that you've been there then because Mount Pleasant Gardens is an award-winning facility. You guys have won a lot of Best of awards. So we go back and we look at, for example, voted Best in Mount Pleasant in 2022, 2023, 2024. Best in Health starting back in 2020. So that's got to make you feel good. As you look at someone is bringing a loved one to the facility, what's the biggest challenge that you think they're going to face in that transitional period going from home to Mount Pleasant Gardens?
Biggest challenge is more so for the families. A lot of times it's hard to let go, right? And I always say no one's going to care for your loved one better than you. But we do little things different around here. I've been in memory care for 15 years, and with someone with dementia, they're not able to reason. You can't reason with them. So if you tell them you're going to be moving to memory care, who in their life says, when I get older, I want to move to memory care? Nobody. So we kind of, it's like I tell them they don't want to lie, but if you tell them the truth, they're not going to come. When they do tell them the truth, they're usually running down the street and I'm trying to grab them. So we tell them they're coming here for lunch. I want their first experience to be positive. So they come, they think they're coming for lunch. And then we go after lunch, then that's where we tell them, well, you're going to stay just tonight. We're going to do therapy with you. After a week or so, they definitely adjust. The families are the ones that struggle, especially the spouses, where their whole world revolved around being the caregiver for sometimes 5 years, 8 years. And now they have all this time on their hands. It's like they have to find their new identity. I encourage them to go to support groups, try to make friends and, spend time with their grandchildren again. It's a whole new life for them.
Well, Leanne, and this, I'm not sure that you could answer this, but you're more the expert. I have to think for the family member, it's such an emotional decision. So how is it that can you give me any tips that somebody might be able to help someone work through the emotional part of that?
Yeah, so they come in crying in my office every time I give a tour, especially when we have two sides here. We have the high functioning and the lower cognitively functioning. And I show them both sides to kind of feel like, where's your loved one at? And usually they start crying because when you can see where this disease can take you, it's very emotional. And so they ask me, I have a wife actually just left me a voicemail. I need your assistance. How do you know when it's time? And what I tell them, I say, well, I can't really tell you. Each person is different. Some people say, as soon as my loved one's incontinent, that's when I'm moving them in memory care. Or my husband's keeping me up all night. I can't do this any longer. Or I feel trapped in my house. I'm a prisoner in my own house. I can't leave without, finding a sitter. And I said, everyone, or their own health. Someone had a heart attack. I've had someone who found out they had cancer again. Everyone's reasoning why when it's time is personal, but I tell them, you're coming to me now. So that tells me that you are already feeling the burden. If you're coming to walk into tour with my community, you're having a struggle right now. And you have to know that you've done the best that you can for your loved one. And we can provide something for them that you can't. When you are a homeowner, you have bills to pay, you have dishes to do, you have laundry to do. Well, what is your loved one doing when you're doing all of these chores? They're probably sitting in front of a TV, right? They're not using their brain. And with Alzheimer's, you need to use your brain or you're going to lose it. Here, we have them doing activities I start with my men. We do breakfast. I serve them breakfast and we do trivia at 7:00 in the morning. And then at 9:30, they're starting exercise. They're doing current events. They're doing activities to keep them engaged and busy all day long. And so you see the improvement in them. And then the families say, wow, because they feel almost guilty because they were just sitting at home all day, So you have to look at the positives of it too.
So Denise, someone listening to our podcast, watching, is thinking, okay, I may have a family member, a spouse who perhaps could really benefit by being at Mount Pleasant Gardens. What's the ways that they should go about getting information from you? Is it the website? Should they call? Obviously, they have to set up a tour. Can you run me through how you'd like to see that process go?
Well, definitely they give us a call. They absolutely do. They hear from us word of mouth, and we really work hard at that word of mouth so that they know we're not just somebody to walk in when you're ready to move somebody in. You can walk in and we'll begin talking to you and giving you resources through support and information to help you. But really, I have to say, Leanne takes that lead on that, and she will go ahead and come together with a family. They absolutely become very connected to Leanne as they move through this process. And it's a beautiful thing to see how she really works with them and eases their fear to get them, to understand what this is all about. And, they'll trust her, and we want them to trust us as well. So they walk through the door and they're going to be immediately given to Leanne, and she will work with them, one-on-one. If Leanne's not there, I'm here. And for me, it's about the personal journey. I mean, I've had aunts, that I've been working with, and one that I just said goodbye to that had been on this journey. And so we talk from our hearts. And, as you walk through this building and you see what's going on here, I hope you have a sense of love and hominess, and that we all feel we are on a mission, that God has given us a mission to care for those that are journeying through this disease. And as a team, you'll see that we all work together as one, with the purpose of that individual connected to us. So when you walk in, we want you to go to Leanne or go to any of us that sees our community, and we want you to become part of our family. We really do.
And there's just, so I sometimes meet with families for 2 or 3 years before they actually make the move. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to do that. I tell them to call me, text me, email me anytime. They need resources for home care, non-medical care, hospice care, rehab, they can call me. And then once they move into the community, we give them our personal cell phones. So they have Denise's, Judy, our health service director, and mine. So they have full access to all three of us at all times.
So Leanne, for someone who's watching, listening to our podcast now, if they want to reach out to you, can you give us a number, an email where they can contact you?
They can call our main number, which is 843-216-1001. They can call my cell phone, 843-996-0669. Or our website, which is gardensmemorycare.com. Sorry, our ownership name changed. And then my email is my name, Leanne, Leanne .Lovin. You're loving it. LOVIN at gardensmemorycare.com or Denise.Kish at gardensmemory.com. But mainly just calling first, and I'm happy. I usually spend about an hour on the phone sometimes, just, collecting information. Sometimes they're not ready to tour, and that's okay. That's a big step to come tour sometimes.
Well, it's something a lot of us don't want to look forward to, but it's great to know that, hey, if we need this service, it's available here in Mount Pleasant. For somebody who's wondering, Denise, Mount Pleasant Gardens is located where?
At 1025 Hungry Neck Boulevard. It's right behind the Lowe's area in Town Center.
Denise Kish is the Executive Director of Mount Pleasant Gardens, and Leanne Lovin, the Community Resource Director. Ladies, thanks so much for joining us today and for all the information.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mount Pleasant Gardens featured in the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine, and today with me, Brian Cleary, on the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.